for us to keep your journey running safely and smoothly. Keep your belongings with you at all times. And if you see something that doesn't look right, we'll sort it. See it, say it, sorted.
I think our world is saturated with various forms of surveillance, and we get accustomed to it. We stopped caring. We stopped noticing those cameras, or perhaps there are other forms of surveillance that which involve us. Meaning, it's not only the cameras that are on the top of the buildings, but also the cameras that we turn on ourselves, and we start surveying ourselves using smartphones, uploading stuff on social media. I think that's a kind of surveillance which is much more pervasive and much more subversive in a way, because it's quite easy to notice things, cameras which are out there, but we don't really notice the fact that we do it ourselves, to us, by publishing images of ourselves.
When you ask me about surveillance and psychic life, it's more about thinking about psychic surveillance, so that it's something about one's mind being either projected into or taken over, so that one is like, the surveillance for me is to do with having already internalized, like you say, either a gaze or an expectation.
That's happened, say, into the, as we now know through Cambridge Analytica and Facebook, but the way in which it's your body itself that is the capital, and the way in which with the kind of data now in terms of social media. It's you, nothing else matters. It's you. Just carry on doing what you want. Make your choices. Thank you. And that's what we want to capture.
And it's also ridiculous and insane and grotesque how even now, like how gendered things are about that, like the pink and the blue, and they're going into, it's just around babies. It's actually sickening. It's like I couldn't believe it actually. Like you would have thought it had changed a bit, but it's so deeply rigid. It really is. But it's a matter, like you say, about how you navigate and negotiate that as a parent of daughters or sons, and as a daughter of parents. I mean, it's not. We all know that it's not definitive. There's spaces in between.
So, the sense of being out of place and trouble if you are in place, I think, has probably shadowed me all my life. Whether though, I mean, the extent to which it's troubled me psychically, there's no doubt about it.
Who's Mummy's little girl? Who's Mummy's little princess? I know what will look perfect. And there we are. You are a beautiful little girl. Ooh. You look so beautiful in your pink dress. Oh, one day you're going to grow up to be just like Mummy.
So I think also from being a child, there's a sense that before you've even said I, the possibility of saying I has already been taken away from you on some level. For me, it was probably through being a girl, and agency, and also being given guilt. So I think that's to do with surveillance, that you're surveyed as a subject before you've become a subject. Through all the things that you've said, gender, race, class, whatever, sexuality.
The family itself was the institution that needed to be that family form, the institution that absolutely was constituted and policed like hell to ensure that it reproduced the same set of hierarchies and normativities.
Yeah.
It absolutely had to do that.
Yeah.
So the family both polices and is policed.
Yeah. Family in its nuclear form could become more and more deconstructed and go away, then there would be a much more a deeper, more meaningful opportunity for certainly women to have a better life.
Yeah, I want to start from the kind of the backdrop of the notion of camera as a recording device. You know, there's Dziga Vertov when he made Men with a Movie Camera, a brilliant film, which brilliant use of montage and brilliant also exposition of the theme of camera as an eye, as an objective eye that records real things. and thought about camera as a kind of ideal I. And we went very far from that. That ideal I was supposed to, in the 20s, was supposed to give us the perfect shape, the perfect image of the world, which would uncover social relations, would uncover things which are kind of hidden behind structures. And suddenly that ideal I, it turns out to be a tool of something of the opposite, something of the tool of that is used by those forces and systems that try to limit our knowledge of the world and limit the knowledge of the social relations. So there's a kind of, this is very as a perverse, a kind of reverse, where the tool which was in the 20s developed by avant-garde filmmakers became mainstream, but mainstream in a kind of sinister and menacing way. And I think that's perhaps the problem is with how we use that tool, and it's just a tool like anything else, and it can be used in various ways. There's something particular about camera, that kind of imaginary capability of recording things unmediated, which is both alluring but also slightly misleading, because things are never unmediated, even if you use a tool which is based on a lack of mediation. Things are, everything is mediated because of the process of editorial control, because of the process of creating worlds with that tool. So I think that the question of using camera as a tool of resistance is a loaded one, but it's not necessarily about changing the tool. It's just about recovering its initial promise.
I think being a digital, not being a digital native has made me a bit oblivious.
I'm oblivious to it, but I'm just, because we're being forced to think about, well, what does this current forms of surveillance do? And yet, I suppose that sense of surveillance and surveillance that Simone Brown is talking about, the way in which we turn the cameras back out and look back.
Yeah.
And of course, in a sense, movements have always looked back, always to reveal the operations of power. So there is a looking back.
Yeah.
What does that do? I don't know what any of it does, but I do think that we are
turning the gaze back on the surveillance days. You mean? Exactly.
And yet we get looked at all the time. I remember a story again. Lewisham. When was Lewisham? I don't know. The big fight in Lewisham. So we all convened on New Cross Bridge and everything, and it was huge. It was absolutely huge. And the police blocked us and were shouting and protesting and all that kind of stuff. And this is before it got down to Lewisham itself, and it kind of kicked off. And I remember I was on a megaphone, leading the chant at one point. That somebody had put it in my hand. And then hours later, we were down in Lewisham, and then it really kicked off. There was battles with the police, and in Lewisham itself, I got chased by a policeman. He caught me, he smashed me in the face and knocked my glasses off and broke them, and then arrested me. Okay, so I go to thing, and my solicitor says, "But they're selling us, and they have years and years and years of footage of you at numerous rallies, and they named them, and some were right, and everything. And you are not just a leader; you're an agitator.
So you've been trapped.
And if you don't plead guilty to this and go into court, they will bring it all against you."
Speaking about surveillance, the other form of surveillance are police helicopters who are hovering about, any kind of demos and collect their footage.
Hey, watch out, boy.
I kind of believe, I hate the notion of identity politics as something that was bad, because frankly, it saved my life.
Talking about
Identity
in the
politics
beginning.
opened up a different kind of space and a different possibility to be something different. Now, is that the end of the horizon? Absolutely not. Do we understand more about its limitations now? Absolutely. Not least, obviously, because of the profound challenge that trans is facing us all with. How do we then think about questions of male, female, none of those, fluidity? How do we really think about all those questions? I think that but that's because of pushing on from what was achieved by the political challenges that happened. I think that's really important. At the same time, we know that public bathrooms, trying to go into the toilet called women's, if you are anything other than dressed in the way, then you will be followed in, questioned, or look, the thing will be looked at. So we know that the site of policing of this is the public loo, and that tells us about what's not happened, as well as what the curriculum changes might tell us as what has happened, and they sit in tension with each
What I would say about resistance is that it depends on what level you think about you're thinking about it. On the the minute level of everyday life, I think is absolutely crucial. And I do lots of little things, that build up in a day that make you feel like all of the systems which are trying to crush us. There are moments during the day that even very small things, or even conversations, or collaborations, or encounters that can build up to feeling like you're not just a passive interpolated object, but at the same time that it has to be working with much bigger structural intervention. So for me, it's trying to understand how you live the everyday with these small acts of resistance, and how you link those to solidarity and collectivity and more structurally profound ways of changing things. But it has to be on all different registers. And I did 12, it was a 12-part series called Daily Subversions, and I interviewed different artists, activists, people working in places, just all different people, and asked them, what do you think a daily subversion is, and what do you do? And people gave amazing stories of the little things that they do, either in their workplace or in their family, or as they walk along the street, to try and have moments of resistance to make you feel like a subject. So I was at that point really interested in the Disserto book, which is about that, it's about tactics and strategy, and how you make little small interventions, even things like doing a shortcut, or going really small little things. And then I interviewed people, and that was a radio program about daily subversions, and that was my way of doing some kind of practice-based work, to understand how people live resistance in minute ways, not the big grandiose ways. So when I did that, it gave me content about how other people lived resistance, but also doing the program in itself was part of my way of not just being an academic and not just reading books and writing theories, but trying to talk to people and then make a audio object that charted some people's time. And this was in 2008 2011, and it was very much linked to the 2008 crisis and how people were thinking about that. It was a particular sort of cultural moment, and that's online. It's called Daily Subversion. A discourse which sees the mad bit of the person being to do with what that system and family or cultural surveillance or social made impossible, and so it becomes like a foreign object in their own minds, and then that's labelled mad. But in fact, that's the bit of the self or the bit of the excess or the energy that needs to be harnessed into something authentic. Is that right? Could there be something authentic even? I don't know.